How are you? It's been a long time. Did we just see her floating in on the screen? Was it this year?
Maybe.
I'm sure. Alive and well. Yeah. Or no, it's weird.
All right, we started. Okay. Well, let's call this meeting to order. Jody, would you mind starting us off with a roll call, please? You are on mute.
Sorry about that. So for roll call, we have Chair John Foley,
Present.
Douglas Brenizer, Vice Chair,
Present.
Kat Pence,
Present.
Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Edgecombe,
Present.
Christopher Burkholder,
Present.
Mike Morrow,
Present.
Arnaud Verstoif,
Present.
Everybody's here.
All right.
and then other staff and guests present are Counselor Nishioka, John Pascal, Aaron Eisen, Jody Vanderwall, Mark Bechtel, Richard Field, and Benjamin Wigton, excuse me.
Mark is not here, just so you know, Jim.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Mark's on vacation.
Usually he is, apologies.
Yeah, and I'd also like to welcome both Ben Wigton and Richard Field here, Rick Field. They're our newest AAC members, so welcome and looking forward to having you on the board next year. The next item is approval of agenda. Has everyone received and reviewed the agenda? Any additions that we need to add? All right, so if there's nothing to be added, could I ask someone to move to approve the agenda as distributed?
I so move.
All right, Kat made a motion. Could I get a second? Second. Doug seconded. All right, all in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, say aye. Aye. All right, so moving on to the approval of last meeting's minutes. Has everyone received and reviewed the minutes from the September 25th meeting?
Yes.
I had one minor observation on that one. I think we had Kat was listed as absent and vice chair, and I think Kat was only absent. Doug's the vice chair. Were there any other corrections needed to the minutes? All right, if seeing there's none, could someone move to approve the minutes with that one noted correction? So moved. Doug moved, and do I need a second? I second. Arnaud seconded. All right. So all in favor of approving the minutes as distributed with the one correction, please say aye. Aye. All right. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I don't believe we've received any comment from the public, and I don't know if any of the public that's present.
We have not, but we do have two public here, technically. Or three if you want to count Counselor Nishioka. So.
Yeah, I'm your liaison, so I'm the council liaison, and I just get to sit back
Should
and
probably introduce
listen.
So for those that don't know Counselor Nishioka, this is Rick Field.
Hi.
And this is Ben Wigton. So they're going to our incoming AAC commissioners. So we'll be replacing Mr. Foley, Mr. Brenizer after the first of the year. So
Right.
coming in to observe tonight. So Counselor Nishioka is our council liaison because the airport's in Ward 2. The tiny sliver in Ward 3.
Tiniest.
She has the whole.
Tiny, it's mostly mine.
Also yours.
Especially in
All yours, Counselor.
All right, so any public comment? All right, well then we're moving right along here. We're going to continue on to the reports. John, was there a tower chief report?
I do have a tower chief report. Rob's actually up in the tower tonight. It's very, very brief. In fact, there were no mandatory occurrence reports, no accidents or incidents in the last 2 months. So all we sent along was the traffic count, excuse me, for the year. So year to date, we're at 41,932 operations. And then for the entire year of 2023, we're at just over 46,000. So we're actually on pace to probably eclipse last year's total number of operations. That is all he sent along. I'm happy to respond back to him with any questions or anybody might have.
Do you have any questions for
Tower chief?
our chief?
Typically our tower chief's here, but sometimes he's on duty in the tower, so he's not joining.
We keep him very busy. All right, so moving on, I guess John attached the airport manager's report to the meeting packet. Are there any questions regarding that? And I would ask that we hold any of the questions about the the proposed code changes until we get to the action items portion of the meeting. So any questions about any of the other content in that report? Nathan or Lieutenant Colonel Edgecombe, do you have anything?
Nope. Nothing for me. I'm just reviewing it again here and I can't think of anything. Thank you.
Yeah, Arnaud?
There was one complaint filed by Shirley Evans. She asked what could be done about things she reported. Did you give her a formal answer?
I did not respond to her. I'd have to check with the airport operations manager and if he sent a response. So he just included that with his noise complaint, but I don't know what the discussion revolved around.
Her location is around the fairgrounds, which is pretty far away from the airports. And she was reporting low flying and maneuvering jets.
Yeah, small jet, silver in color, October 6th.
Seems like a weird location for that.
So I don't have an answer to that, but I can certainly check with the airport operations manager to see what the response was.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, if there's no more questions on the report, we can move on. There is an item on the agenda for my report. I don't actually have much of a report. I just, other than to note, this is my last regularly scheduled AAC meeting as a commissioner and as the chair. So I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with y'all for what, 8 years now, I think, since 2016. Yeah, it's been exciting to witness all the great stuff that's happened at the airport, air commercial air service, all kinds of new things.
You're just now getting busy and you're gonna.
Yeah, I know. I think maybe I'm making my exit, right? It's gonna get to be real work.
Yeah, and we did, just to make a note, John, we did add the chair's report under reports as we were looking back through the requirements for agendas. We had not had that in the past, so that's why it's on there. It's just gonna be a standing item from now.
All right.
You ever want to have a report the future chair wants to do a report on?
All right.
Okay.
Well, I think that's all I had to say. Moving on to action items. I guess I'd like to take up the proposed amendments to the Salem Revised Code. And John's brought that to the AAC and in the hopes of getting a recommendation to move forward with this. But I believe you've got some other material to introduce.
Correct, yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I did include the slides in the packet just so you had an opportunity to review them in advance, and I'll walk through the slides for folks that haven't seen that yet. And I also included a copy of Salem Revised Code Chapter 9 for those of you who have never read it, and it occurred to me many of you have probably never read it. You will in your orientation be you'll get the airport rules and regulations, SRC Chapter 9, all the things that are required to essentially manage and run the airport day to day. So Salem Revised Code Chapter 9 is the airport's overarching code. So any changes any policy decisions or changes that the city council is going to make to how we operate or manage the airport requires a code change. We're planning on taking this request to the city council on January 13th. So when we back up calendar wise, because this commission meets every other month, November or January would be our options, or a special meeting. So I opted to bring it forward in this meeting just so we had an opportunity to talk about it and get it on the table and get it out for discussion. And it'll be up to the commission to decide what they want to do tonight or if they want to have a special meeting. Because what I have right now is pretty broad in scope. It's sort of the concept of the change that we're going to make. The red line changes that some folks have asked for is going to take probably the next 2 to 4 weeks because we have to work with legal on what the actual language is going to be. We have to confirm that we're not in violation of any state ORSs. And so there's a lot of legwork that has to happen there. Certainly whatever changes we do make, if we have a special meeting, you'll see them there, or I'll share the changes with the commission if you decide tonight that's how you want to. So that's kind of the background on what the code change is about. And really these 2 items are focused on how we collect landing fees and aircraft parking fees. Those are outlined in the code, and they're just actually very poorly written, even if we weren't going to planning to automate or change how we charge fees. As an example, it references general aviation, but general aviation is not an FAA definition. And so there's a lot of things like that in there, or commuter airline. That's not a definition either. What's a commuter airline, right? So there's a lot of cleanup I think that we need to do anyway. There's also that we've changed the name of the recently. So it's just an opportunity for us to go through the entire code a lot of cleanup, but also focus on these two areas in an effort to generate more revenue. We have a council mandate to generate as much revenue, maximize revenue, and minimize expenses best we can, particularly since we've engaged in commercial air service, because there's been a lot of added expense without enough offsetting revenue. So, but this is not unique to Salem. This is airports across the country have revenue gaps. It's become more and more expensive to run airports. And we're finding new and creative ways to generate revenue. And now with newer technology, there's some opportunities that we would not have had before. Many airports tried to collect landing fees or aircraft parking fees, just sort of by who they saw given on that day. And then they would send a bill and hopefully somebody sent them a check and those kind of things. But it's a manpower nightmare, and then it's also not equitable. You're only catching who you catch, and so people that fly in after hours don't get charged, and there's just some fairness stuff there. So anyway, that's kind of just sort of a basis. I'll walk through sort of the methodology behind how this would work, and then we'll get to the meat and potatoes of the actual code change. We wouldn't be able to do any of the things I'm going to share with you without city council agreeing that that's how they want to change the code to collect landing fees and parking fees at the Salem Airport. So this will be something that you'll see in January. Right now it's scheduled
Get a
for the 13th.
Get the trailer.
Get the trailer. And then
John,
of course, you know, with the holidays and everything, if it takes extra time to get through legal and stuff, it might go to the second meeting. in
Okay.
January. But with code changes,
John.
is the first reading and second reading.
Sorry,
ma'am.
I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah.
Could you share your screen? I've made you a co-host, so that should.
Yeah, I haven't started sharing it, but thank you. I'm
Okay,
gonna
great.
try to do that here. Everybody's staring at me. So, and I'm on Zoom and I'm used to Teams.
That's right
There you go, right in the middle.
Yeah.
They even highlighted it in green. Thanks, Mike. Why we keep Mike around. I'm just kidding. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to share a link from this company's website. It's just a little 2-minute video about what they do and how they do it. They actually do a number of things. Is that everybody can see this? It says Plane Pass by Vector on it. Nope. Yep. Somebody. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yes, we can.
So they
I
provide a
can.
variety of services, but what we're focused on right here is aircraft fee billing and collection services. I'm going to kind of skip over these words because they really sort of show up in the presentation. I just want to get down to this video here just to kind of give you an idea of what Plane Pass is, who Vector is, and why this is an effective methodology.
Maximizing airport revenue is always a challenge. It's a complicated process, and ongoing staffing shortages and manual processes lead to airports only collecting 60 to 70% of the airside fee dollars they're owed. Plane Pass by Vector Airport Systems is the solution for airports worldwide. With our 100% aircraft tracking capability and a 99.6% collection success rate, Plane Pass is the outsourced aircraft fee billing service that has changed the game. Here's how it works. The Plane Pass team does all the work for you. Track. Plane Pass automatically detects and tracks aircraft operations. Bill. Our billing engine calculates fees, generates and delivers invoices, and maintains operator accounts. Service. Plane Pass also provides live in-house customer service. Collect. And pursues unpaid balances with our in-house collection team. Report, all while providing complete aircraft operations and finance reports to ensure 100% transparency and compliance. Using the power of Plane Pass's proprietary database, we know exactly who to bill every time. So if you suspect that you're losing out on potential revenue, struggling with staffing and collection issues, or just want to learn how other Plane Pass airports have maximized their fee revenue, contact us today for a quick, no-cost operations analysis so we can show you how much additional revenue Plane Pass can generate for you.
We did do that. I'm not going to share those numbers. I'm not sure I believe them, but you know, it's of course it's different at every airport. You have to make a bunch of assumptions. All right, I'll stop sharing this screen, and then I'm going to share another screen here that is actually the presentation that I put in the packet. I'll walk through it here. So again, this is just who they are.
We're not sharing it.
Oh, I'm not sharing it. Thanks. This is great. I appreciate you sitting on my.
Gotta go back to the Zoom window.
Back down. back to Zoom. Share we go. Share we go. Okay. Thank you, sir. I gotta get up to my screen. So again, this is just who they are and what they do. We just talked about that a little bit. We actually visited with them back in the spring, and then again in the summertime, we did the analysis to see if it was who is this company, what do they do, and we wanted to do our due diligence, talk to other airports, and make sure that it was right for Salem. And so that's what we've done over the past 6 months or so. It's the only company I'm aware of that does this out there. We haven't found. There are other companies that do various flight tracking type things. PlanePass does, our Vector does that also. In fact, they have a noise monitoring solution where you can actually track. So if somebody says, well, a silver jet flew over my house, now I would be able to go in and look and see what aircraft that was 24 hours a day. If it's up currently, if it's outside tower hours, we have no way to track what aircraft that was. At least we don't have that in-house. So there's some other benefits, I think, to this system that we're not talking about tonight, but they do exist. So the technology's there now in the last 2 to 5 years. I mean, since ADSB and some of these other satellite solutions have become, available, there's a lot of use cases for it. So PlanePass is just one of the things that this company does. This is kind of just basically what the video just showed. They're an automated full service, non-contact fee billing and collection solution. If you can imagine how airports used to try and collect landing fees, it would have been impossible for other than self-reporting entities like air carriers and air taxis. If you said, well, we want to charge business jets, how do you define that? How do you track that? How do you bill that? And a lot of airports are trying to do it in-house, and it becomes a full-time job, and it's a very expensive effort to try and collect enough money to even pay for that position. So they do all of this electronically. They do it 100% on their nickel. It's no cost to the city, no cost to the airport. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Here's all the stuff they do. They install their own equipment, they monitor everything, they invoice, they track, they send reports. Companies can even set up an account if they don't already have one with PlanePass, and they can pay through there, so they can get their invoices electronically and get payments electronically. So it's all hands off to the airport. We essentially get a check at the end for, the remainder after their fees for their services. That's one of the attractions for airports that are our size. So we don't actually have to do anything. And this is just another screen grab off their website about how it works. So how they collect all the information, how aircraft are being tracked and monitored and all of that. And then it goes into their back office and whatever magic they do behind the scenes, aircraft operations. What we're going to talk about here in a little bit is the code change requirements, is how we develop our program here is what they manage for us. They don't develop the program. They don't tell you how you should do it or who you should bill or any of that. You develop your own program locally for what works for your airport, because every airport's different. Boeing Field is certainly different than Salem, right? Who we're going to exclude, those sorts of things. So once we set up our program, those are the parameters that they operate inside of. And then if there are, unusual circumstances, like Garmin, for instance, has aircraft that they own, but they also have aircraft that they may lease for a period of time. And so we would have to work through, iron out some of those things. If it's technically a based aircraft for 6 months, we'll exclude that for 6 months. And then it flies back to its own airport. And so again, those are the parameters that this company operates within. And they would contact me to contact any of the entities here on the airport that feel like they should be excluded, or that maybe they got a bill that they shouldn't have gotten. And then there's just all the banking stuff. So eventually they take their fee, and then the rest comes back to the airport in terms of revenue. And this would be both for landing fees and for overnight parking fees, which currently are managed by Salem Air Center. And it's a 50-50 split. And there's waivers if you take so much fuel, and it gets sort of very complicated. And quite frankly, landing fees and parking fees at this airport are almost nothing. They're in terms of our overall budget, they're insignificant, and that's a problem. I would say that between landing fees and parking fees, if we put the program together the way we think, that we'll easily generate into the 6 figures. I'm not sure I believe their analysis, because it was pretty robust. But if we're collecting $5,000 a year now and we go to 50,000 or 150,000, that's a big deal for this airport. It's a lot of lost revenue, and of course, again, it's going to be very, very expensive to continue to maintain this airfield. The lighting systems, the signage systems, the pavement, the paint, everything has gone up in price, in some cases more than double. So airports across the country, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, are moving to, alternative methods of collection. This is just some information about what they collect, how much they collect every year, their success rate. They have said that they really don't get much at all pushback on, for the folks that normally are billed, which are like large general aviation and commercial operators. There's no pushback. They just pay the bill. They expect, to have to pay landing fees or field use fees or whatever you call them at your airport. They're actually closer to 100 airports now. They're continuing to add airports regularly, including some here in Oregon. Here's a list just of the ones I know of, just off the top of my head. You can see it's everybody from Medford, Oregon, all the way over to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts and down into Texas. And so you'll notice a lot of these are kind of mid-sized, smaller commercial service or mid-sized commercial service airports. A lot of the bigger airports have their own in-house capabilities to do those things, or they're large enough where they're essentially almost all commercial air service. And so the self-reporting from Alaska Airlines and Delta Airlines, they report their own landing fees and they do all the transfers. So it's not as necessary for them to outsource it, although some of them are. You see Colorado Springs in here. There are some busier airports that are doing this. So this is just a sample. Medford is one of the more recent ones, and I've got a great relationship with their airport manager. And so I've talked at length with her about their experience with it. And they were trying to do it manually. And I've talked to people at Boeing Field, Santa Rosa. They've all said it's just wonderful because it's seamless. It's just completely hands off. It's no cost, and you just see increased revenue. That's essentially all the airport is interested in. And so, so it's been all good news story. I haven't found anybody that's done business with these folks that has been anything but happy. So, so this is some of the due diligence we were working. So that's the who and the what and all that. Now we get down to. As I was canvassing through the code, originally I thought, well, we bring to the AAC and then take to the city council in December, just the new resolution for what level of service we are going to charge. But as I started reading the code, I realized that the code does not allow us to change or to bill how we would want to bill. So there's changes here. This 9.095A3 has to do with the parking. This is just aircraft parking or tie down fees, which are currently collected by the FBO. They keep 50%, 50%. And that's kind of it. The proposed changes would not only automate the collection of aircraft overnight parking fees for all transient aircraft with 100% of the revenue after the freighter's fees sent to the airport as revenue. And then I've talked to Salem Air Center to make sure that we're not disrupting their business. They can still charge ramp fees for their service. They can waive those if you purchase fuel or however they want to manage their own fees, but that would be separate from the parking fees that we would charge for using our transient parking ramp. And so that's it for parking. Parking is really pretty straightforward. That would just require some language changes there that we would essentially automate it. And then we would also describe in there which it doesn't have today, because again, this top line is the language that's in there. We would have essentially a tiered system for weights. So I've got a sample that I still have to kind of iron out, but it would be, zero. There's nothing that weighs 0 pounds, but 0 to say 12,500 pounds to 30,000. You're going to pay more for your weight and the size space that you're taking up. So we would identify that in here. Or we would put in language that would authorize the airport manager to change those fees through the city's budgeting process every budget year. So those are, again, some of the things we have to iron out with legal and kind of how we want to, because we don't have to go back and do code changes all the time. So it'd be better to try and get it right now and not have to touch this for another decade or something. So that's aircraft parking fees. Then you go to 9.095 Charlie.
One question, I actually better wait till the end.
Yeah, you can jump in.
I was kind of curious, so if in that scenario, they did charge ramp fees, would they then get 100% or would they
Yes,
still
that
get
would be
it back to the city?
Those would be their fees. I think we would bifurcate the two.
Okay.
And that's the discussion we had with the FBOs. We don't want to disrupt their business. We don't want to take any business away from them. They essentially, that's kind of what they do now, except they're really doing it with parking fees. They sort of lump parking and ramp service fees all in one fee. So it's not really clear if the aircraft stayed overnight, didn't stay overnight. That's really kind of the definer for us. We're not anticipating charging people that show up for the, you know, the $100 hamburger at the flight deck. It's the overnight parking. And then this system can track who parked and then when they actually departed to determine if it was a true overnight or not. The way the FBO manages their ramp fees, a little bit kind of muddy how they separate that out for parking. So I actually think just as a side benefit, this just makes it neater and cleaner. Their fees are separate from our fees and there's no trading hands of money. I get a check once or twice a year from Salem Air Center. You have to assume there's no way to audit it. And it's really not a very clean, good system. It was good for a lot of years, but we're just getting to a point now. We're actually busy enough now that there's just loss of revenues almost to it. So
Okay, what I'm below, I've raised my hand before, so, does this then have a way to capture revenue from like FedEx comes and does a touch and go, or the other folks are just doing training that aren't parking here overnight per se?
yeah, so that's how we would develop our program. What are we going to consider exempt from landing fees or parking fees? And that's still things that we're ironing out. Certainly I want the input from this group. But as we go along here, we'll talk about parking. I think is a little bit neater and cleaner. We're sort of just anticipating, you know, any aircraft, doesn't matter what size or weight or anything, overnight aircraft parking, just like vehicle parking. If you're gonna park at the airport, you pay to park at the airport. So that's not gonna have really any exemptions. When you get to landing fees, there will be quite a few exemptions. So no, it's okay. So that's the next section, 9.095 C1 through 3 talks about how fuel flow or how landing fees are charged now. And what it says is only to scheduled commuter airline users. Anybody sitting at this table that can tell me what a scheduled commuter airline user is, please do, because that's not actually a thing. Scheduled airline service is a thing. What's the commuter versus regional versus domestic versus international? Those are all different definitions. And so that's not very clear anyway. General aviation aircraft, which again, general aviation is not an FAA definition. That also includes business jets and includes privately owned aircraft. It includes lots of, the GA is a different term that we use. They're charged a fuel flowage fee in lieu of a landing fee. So if they buy fuel, we get 8 cents per gallon for every gallon pumped on the airport. It's really not a lot of money, and not everybody takes fuel. And fuel landing fees or parking fees get waived if you took fuel. That's the way the FBO is running now. So again, it's not very clean to eat, and it's not a really good source of revenue for us. And then it says military and government aircraft are charged a service fee negotiated in advance based on the type of mission and aircraft operation. Well, I get military and government aircraft in here all the time, and I don't know in advance that they're coming, and they don't know that that's the rule to call me in advance and sort out what their fee is going to be and what type of aircraft. So it's just not workable. It doesn't do anything for us. And when we get to the exemptions here in a little bit, my advice would be that we have to exempt federal government aircraft because we take federal grants. So they already get use of the airport. But obviously, I think we'd all agree that law enforcement and firefighting and emergency services aircraft should not be charged a landing fee. So these are just the kind of the proposed changes. I'm kind of drifting into that category here now. So we would want to define scheduled, non-scheduled, commercial, which includes cargo. So you asked about FedEx. Cargo is considered a commercial operation, but it's not a scheduled commuter airline. You can kind of see the difference there, right? It's not differentiated very well. And then general aviation aircraft operators by type. So Part 91, Part 121, Part 135, et cetera. And so our definitions, regardless of whether we changed how we collect or what we collect, the definitions need to be changed. Period, because this is just not workable for us, and it's not. These are just old, archaic code, old archaic code language. So, and then I think we would want to define, well, not want to, we would want to define the exemptions to landing fees. So we would exempt all aircraft that are based at this airport, and special use cases like Garmin, where maybe they have a temporary aircraft that comes in for 6 months to do some R&D, and then it's not based at Salem permanently, but it is sort of semi-permanently. So those are all the things we would work out. We would exempt federal and state government, military, law enforcement, emergency response aircraft. That would be the proposal. And then we would want to define what the maximum gross landing weight is before a fee is assessed. So what is that? What's that cutoff number, right? We don't want to run off general aviation flight training. We don't want to charge the guy that, you know, flew in for, you know, lunch at the flight deck restaurant and start hurting their business. And let's face it, you know, Cessna 172s and RV6s don't do a lot of damage to the asphalt. So airports have different thresholds. 5,000 pounds, for me, at least anyway, in my opinion, is a good number to start at. Some airports are at 7,000, some are 8,000, some are at 12,500. But 5,000 pounds captures most even smaller, lighter business jets and big twins, folks that are generally flying for business. You know, the other problem we have is that if an aircraft comes in, we don't know if it's here for personal use or here for business use. It's just a business jet, right? Not all business jets, I know who they are. I know Scott's Miracle-Gro, but I don't know if it's a Vail company, you know, if it's just leased by a bank. We don't know what the purpose of the flight was. So you can't say it's a commercial operation. You really haven't defined what a commercial operation is. So it's easier just to say this weight and above. And then what the recommended minimum would be rounded to the nearest 1,000 pounds, because that's a published weight for every aircraft. It just is what it is. There's no debating over what the max gross landing weight of that aircraft is. It's published by every manufacturer. So it's just a neater, cleaner way of capturing everybody. And now that the technology is there to capture all operations, including those that happen after tower hours, and there are some that happen after tower hours. We have people that fly in, park late at night, and come back in the morning, and we had no idea they were even. They showed up after tower hours and they left before tower was open. So there's really no record of their even being here. In fact, we had a Challenger jet once years ago that did some damage on the airport, and it took us all day to track down who did the damage. And we found out that it was a Challenger 300 that had come in and departed early in the morning, got turned around out there, went down Lima 1, which is not a that's a category 1 aircraft taxiway, and powered its way out and did a bunch of damage to some hangars and things. So now I could go in and just see who flew in here and who flew out. And I could answer that question in 5 minutes instead of taking all day to investigate tire marks in the mud. So that's just a side note. Other advantages of it. And then we would propose that fuel flowage fees would continue to be assessed. And we assess those on all fuel delivered to the airport. So it doesn't matter who's taking the fuel, whether it's the commercial operator, which is Salem Air Center, whether it's a Colson as a private tank operator. All fuel delivered to the airport pays the AAC, and then we don't have to worry about who used it. So we would anticipate not changing that. So the fuel flowage revenue would still exist. We would just be adding additional parking and. So that's the concept. Short of having the red lines, that's just sort of the overarching concept that we want to move towards. It's going to take some time to get to the red lines, but at a minimum tonight, I wanted to at least float this. It's something that the city is interested in because it is a revenue generator, and I wanted to get questions, comments, feedback. And then again, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. It's up to you if you want to do voting on the concept, and staff can come back with red lines later, or if you want to plan a special meeting when we have the red lines to review. Totally up to you. I'm just going to turn it back over to you for questions.
Yeah, I'd like to open up the floor for discussion. Eventually we'll get to figure out what we're going to do with it, but I imagine that there's probably some questions and some thoughts. So I guess I open it up. Anybody, anything you want to add?
Point of order though, Chair, I should have a motion and a second before discussion. And I know we typically don't do it that way, this way, but I recently went through some training.
Okay.
And they reminded us, I thought to myself, we don't normally do that. You typically would have a motion and a second, then discussion. Whether you vote on it.
All right. So
we're trying to mirror this as close as city.
I think we have two options. I thought about this a little bit, and I thought maybe the first option that if we had a motion would be, do we take this up this evening or do we table it to a special meeting? And if we decide to do that, then we don't have to, we can have the discussion in that terms and then make that decision. And then if we decide not to table it, then we could have a second motion to make a recommendation. Yes. Does that seem like a reasonable plan?
Can you explain the two options a bit more?
All right, so I guess the options are, since we've just seen this for the first time, we're talking about imposing fees. We don't have the actual red lines in front of us, so it's somewhat of an amorphous proposal, we could say, hey, as a commission, we're not ready to make a recommendation for this until we have more concrete information, which we would expect to come within the next few weeks. And we would schedule a special meeting sometime in December to make a recommendation about this. That would be one option. The other option is we could kind of bet on the come that this is going to actually work out, and we'll just make a recommendation to the general concept pending, airport staff making the red lines available to the AAC. And then if it turned out that we looked at those and it was something that we didn't agree with, we have the option to actually go to the city council meeting on January 13th and make.
Or the chair could call.
Or we could call a special meeting there too.
So part of the chair's responsibility, for those of you that are new in the room and those that don't really pay real close attention, the chair can call or cancel any meetings as he or she sees fit. So you could do it both ways. It's really your option.
So I guess, so that was my thought, was we can start off and say, well, this is new information. We get a motion to table this until we have the red lines. And then voting for yes would say we wouldn't take it up and make a recommendation this time. Councilman Nishio.
I will just make a suggestion. If you're wanting to make a motion so that you have time to think about it, or basically when you say table it, what I'm hearing from John is that the possibility is making a motion for staff to provide further information with red lines in this and bring that back to us. And so you could make that motion. Tabling it, I think, is just saying you're gonna wait until those red lines. So I'm just trying to figure out what might be the best way for you if you're wanting to see the red lines and then discuss it.
Well, that was kind of what I was hoping to take the temperature. That was why I wanted to start the discussion before we get a motion.
And probably what it really boils down to is, do you want to try and avoid another meeting?
Yeah.
And it's completely up to the advisory commission
Right.
if they want to hold a special.
My personal opinion is that, because I appreciate the work you did answering these questions, I think that did a lot to allay my personal concerns. So I'm,
Ask for a motion.
yeah, but I guess I want to make sure. Yeah, I guess, can I make the motion, or should I ask somebody else to do it?
No, you can make the motion.
All right, I would move that the AAC recommend that the airport staff move forward with this airport automated landing fees proposal, contingent on providing the red lines to the AAC for review before the end of the year. Is there a second to that motion? I see Doug has seconded it.
Now you can.
All right, now
Now
let's
you
open
can
the table
discuss
to
it.
discussion. Let's hash it out.
Revolving here.
Yeah, so,
I'll get this figured out just in time to not be.
so I'd like to maybe put a more concrete date and just before the end of the year, because when would council be reviewing this? Like the second week of January?
January 13th is the targeted council date. I believe that makes my staff report due December 30th. So I would need my staff report will contain what the Airport Advisory Commission ultimately recommends. So as long as I have.
So we work back from that and subtract out 10 days for Christmas and all that. And I mean, is that realistic that we'd have a red line by
I think so.
second week of December?
Yes.
So, and I,
Subject to legal's availability. I can start with my red lines, but when they get to legal, their vacation schedule looks like, or how complex this needs to be.
are we allowed to get a preview before legal has blessed it? In case that doesn't, okay, I mean, if that gets to be a problem, then.
Yeah, what I want to be careful of is that if I start sending out red lines and then people are starting to comment back that we're having a meeting online, and we can't do all of
Yeah,
that. So we have to be
what
quick.
I'm proposing to-
Everybody could respond back to me individually with, their thoughts or whatever, but not as a group, so.
And that's true no matter what, right? Because we can't,
So,
Or do you have
John,
anything
are you
like
able
this?
to have small group meetings, like counselors have to provide information, no decisions are made? So you could have potentially 2 small group meetings and look at the red lines and kind of understand better so that then when you all converge again, I mean,
Okay.
that's also a possibility if you.
Small so that we don't have to
No
actually.
quorum.
No quorum,
Quorum.
yeah.
Right, so if you don't have a quorum, then you can have a meeting without all the public
You
meetings,
just can't
notifications and
discuss.
stuff.
Just can't
Can't
discuss.
discuss, can't take votes, any of that.
Yeah, you don't do votes.
50%.
It's quorum, so it'd have to be less than 4. So groups of 3 and then,
That's
or 2, 3 and 3, 2, 3. and 2.
It's just a possibility. Do you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but do you have a timeline of when you're trying to get this completed? And so I'm just wondering if you can't get it done by the 13th, would you then have it, like be able to go to the end?
Yeah, just go to the next council.
Yeah. So it's not critical.
No, it's only critical in terms of the need for revenue.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to have this done before the end of the.
Yeah, and the end of the year is always problematic.
But I've already started on at least the red line versions of these 2 sections that I'm anticipating that we would need. So I've started working on those already, and then I want to go top to bottom just to make all those other changes. So it could be a lot of stuff in there that's red line. It's just wordsmithing. But I think I can have that done by the end of this month or the first week of December. And then we can readjourn, or we can have small group meetings. But you would have to have a special meeting to vote. So if you want to avoid the special meeting, then you can do the concept thing tonight, which is the motion I think you just made. If you want to have the special meeting and hash out the red lines or vote on the actual red lines, then you're gonna have to have a special.
That would be
meeting.
something that came up out of, if we looked at this and everybody said, oh, this is crazy,
It
we're
went
not
off the
gonna do
rails.
it. Your small groups or however we did it,
Right.
let me know, and then we would call a special meeting to.
That's kind of where my head is at, I
But
think if you have the power and the flexibility to be able to call that meeting if you so chose. So it's kind of like a contingent approval.
yeah,
And I will say, for all those people for all these years that ask me really what's the benefit, what's the point of the AAC? Because it's really not that much to do. This is exactly it, right? We don't do a lot of policy changes, but when we do, the city council wants to know that its citizen advisory groups have reviewed this, that the airport manager's not going off the rails, that he didn't say 5,000 pounds in this meeting, but then he wrote in something that's just way different. And so this is a check for me, it's a check for the city council, it's a check for the airport users, for the transient visitors here. So this is exactly what this commission is for. I don't want it to be my program. I want everybody's input and fingerprints on it so that what we take to council, everybody's happy with. So just want to throw that out there as a side note. You'll get that in your orientation next month.
so we talked quite a bit about procedural stuff. I'm curious as to what people's thoughts are on the actual proposal.
To that point, it makes me a little bit concerned to just give a blanket approval without seeing the details. Because then, yes, we can get toothpaste back in the tube, but it's not easy. I mean, it's gonna take a little bit of doing. Whereas I'm a little bit more of the mindset of, this is really what we're about. Let's make sure we get it right the first time. And let's see all the data, let's see all the actual proposals before we just make a conceptual blanket. Hold up.
It's definitely a reasonable position. Other folks,
I'm a little bit more in that realm.
okay,
I agree too.
all right, so we got these 3. Any other thoughts from folks here?
It would be nice to see the changes before a blank approval.
So I guess it sounds like, I guess Colonel Edgecombe, I don't know if you have any.
I don't, being a government, military, this kind of falls outside of my realm, so I'll just go with what the group decides.
All right, so I kind of thinking point of order, is there additional discussion we want to have on this, or do we want to vote?
So you had a motion and a second for your motion.
Yes.
Which doesn't sound like the way folks are going, but you
No,
need
I
to take a
would-
vote on that.
I would assume that people
If
would
the
vote
vote's down,
no.
then you go
on
back
that.
to, but yeah, I'll assume
Yeah,
take the vote.
so what I'd suggest again is because it sounds like the motion that you made is getting voted down. So you need to hold a vote.
Yep.
Have it voted no, then make another motion of proceeding where you get to see, ask staff to bring this information to you. And are you wanting to call a special meeting?
Well, that's not up to me, that's up to the chair, but can they do a substitute motion instead of voting on the first one? I thought substitute motions were fine.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Either way, you can. Okay.
It would be,
Right.
yeah, actually, it'd probably be cleaner to vote no on this one.
Yeah.
And then do another motion, because it I mean, I'm still trying to understand your motion that you made, because it's rambled a bit. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Restate the motion, get your second, and then I would do a voice vote so that we have everybody's individual vote. So
The second's already been done, so basically try to restate what you did.
there you go.
The motion as I originally stated, and I'm gonna try to do it.
You copying all this, Jody?
Yeah, was to, that the AAC recommend that the city move forward with the plan to revise the city code to support automated landing fees, contingent on the red lines being provided to the AAC before
Well, then,
December.
I don't know, does everyone want to vote no on that one, or is that one a yes, and that then you're gonna be seeing the red lines? That's.
Take the vote.
So let's go ahead and we have a second on that. Let's go ahead and vote, and I guess we'll do around the table. I guess we'll do a roll call.
Make sure everybody understands.
Do we have any questions about what we're voting on?
Well, I'll be fine.
I feel like we're all saying the same thing in different ways.
Yes.
That we want to have the staff go ahead and start the change, start the edits, and then we get to see the edits. Is basically what's happening.
So there will be a discussion later.
Yes.
Yes, so there will be something else that we
So
have.
This would be you go ahead and vote yes on it.
Yes. I would, my assumption is
You're not sure.
that after this is if we voted no on this, which I'm guessing that we will, that the next thing is we will see about discussing whether we want to have another meeting, a special meeting to approve the red lines.
But if we vote yes and it passed, there would be no further discussion.
Until we got the red lines. and then
And
we'd have to try to-
even then, there would be no mechanism of that discussion unless we had the meeting.
Yes, which I.
Right, but
But
then,
he can
right,
call it
It's
in.
but you can call it at any time.
So the question of whether it's explicitly a meeting is the default or a meeting is the kind of the contingency.
So it really is back to your original motion, which is, yeah, we'll see what John gives us and then we'll decide if we can do another meeting or not. I know this is kind of getting into
Can
the.
I just withdraw the motion?
I'd go ahead and take the vote for the record, just so.
Let's go ahead and take the vote.
Or, you know, the other option is you could amend your motion.
Amend your motion.
You can simply say, I'm going to amend my motion and see if we can structure it so that it's clear that what you're all wanting is having staff come back with the red lines and a fuller understanding. But what I don't know is if that's gonna be at your next meeting or if you need to call a special meeting.
Would have to be a special meeting. So our next regular scheduled meeting is not until January 20.
Unless you go past.
And you don't have a chairman after the 31st of December.
That's right. Technically, I don't have a chair or a vice chair. The first of
You're kind of in this very weird loop of
Right.
time.
So we have to you have to let it start moving on it tonight, or we have to just plan on calling a special meeting. It's a matter of whether you want to say right now, we're going to have a special meeting, or if you want to say we're gonna have a special meeting if we don't like what we see. I think maybe is where the differentiation is. But
If I
that's up to
may.
you. You're the chair.
Yes,
If I may, Chair Foley, might I make a recommendation and read you some of the notes that I've written? That might help to clarify the motion and.
okay, go ahead.
So I don't have that there was a second, but I do have the motion as move to recommend the airport staff move forward with a plan to revise the SRC amendment as proposed with the requirement that they provide the red line copy before the year's end, to which the motion was amended to include providing the red line copy by a specific date in December. And so far I have not heard a second.
I did second it.
The first one, but not the amendment.
No, not the amendment, okay.
Gotcha.
Do you need a second for that?
Probably need a
Okay.
second for the. amendment.
I second the amendment then.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
In fact-
I'm now lost.
Did you want me to do a roll
Let's
call
start
to
over.
vote on that?
I would say let's.
All right, let's go ahead. We'll do a roll call vote for this.
Roll call.
I don't know, Dylan, I think maybe we need you for another 6 years so you can kind
What
of.
happened?
I think part of it is trying to understand your timeline and what it is that, you know, you will have an opportunity, when you'll have an opportunity to look at the red lines. I think just making sure that everyone understands what that motion means And I think that's really, right now, as I'm seeing it, that's what I want. I need to understand clearly what this motion is going
So
for.
4 weeks from tonight would be December 18th.
Mhm.
That's if we want a full 4 weeks. And we'll be ready for Christmas and so
I feel like we could have avoided a lot of this discussion before the motion. Personally,
But it's like-
I feel like the
Problem,
procedure has
yeah.
actually made this way harder
that's,
than
yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Welcome to yours.
So,
Get it done.
Go ahead and vote on it, John.
all right, so let's go ahead and vote. I'll do a roll call vote.
It'd be Chris.
I'll call your name, and if you're in favor of the motion, say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Doug Brennheiser.
Aye.
Pat Pence.
Aye.
Colonel Edgecombe.
Aye.
Christopher Burkholder.
Nay.
Mike Morrow.
Nay.
Arnaud Verstoif.
Nay.
Aha.
So
I'm going to vote nay.
Yeah.
So we'll clear that out.
Yep, there you go.
So
we go to the order.
that was not,
Voted down.
yeah, I voted down my own motion. All right,
That's fantastic.
So-
I've never seen that
It's a
before.
process of learning.
yes.
Okay.
So I think from what I gathered from this discussion is that we want more time to see the red lines.
what to see red lines.
Yeah, we want to see the red lines, before we vote to make a recommendation, which I think is completely eminently reasonable. So, John, I guess, do we have a date that we could expect to see those by? And the next motion will be to hold a special meeting upon receipt of those things to.
I don't think you can put a date on it
Motion.
with I don't think you're gonna be able to put a date on it with this in December. You're not gonna have a quorum for most of December, I bet you.
Yeah, not.
Well, so Christmas is Monday sorry, it's November. Sorry. Let's get to December. This, well, all those green lines are me not here, so the very latest would be Thursday, the 19th. 4 weeks from today would be the 18th. I don't know if special meetings don't have to be at night. You can call special meetings whenever during the day you want.
And we can do it online.
You can do it online, you can do it virtually. There's a lot of options. So hold yourself to a Wednesday night.
We need a 24-hour, 48-hour notice.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I mean, again, I don't control legal, but I have a good working relationship with them because we don't cause a lot of trouble. So I'd like to think that, let's see, go back a month here. Tonight,
Realistically, this week is done and next week is.
but I would say the week of the 9th or the latest is 16th, somewhere in there. I think they'll have red lines.
So this would mean that those of you that will be retiring from this, is it a commissioner board, one commission, then you would still be in place.
Right.
And that the two new ones that are coming in technically in January, if they're able to join, at least they can hear what's going on. They technically wouldn't be voting as you demonstrated. And so I think if you're able to find a date and an aspect that it could be hybrid or in person, and John thinks it's legal, that legal can get it done, then I would suggest that you make a motion saying that we will move for a special meeting on such and such a date.
I don't know.
With staff.
Do you need a motion for that?
No.
No, I think we
Okay.
could just,
Cool.
I think we
Okay.
could just leave it the way it is.
As far as an action item, you can.
Yeah.
You don't even have to take action on it if you choose not to.
Right, I don't think we're acting
If
on
that's
it.
what you
So
don't
you
want to
don't,
do.
so you don't need any emotion from them about taking this to legal and getting red lines, staff to do
Does that help light a fire anywhere? If the commission is meeting on this
Nope.
date and there's a deadline.
I think John's pretty motivated.
I mean, it really is, at the end of the day, it is your deadline that we're backing up from and setting a deadline back at you, so.
Yeah, and what I'll end up doing is I'll canvass you guys for availability.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll have to see how it's going.
Yeah,
I'll get in touch with legal tomorrow and just, our legal representative and just kind of gauge his timeline. SRC chapter 9 is not a huge code. It's not ultra lengthy and there's not a lot of changes. These two items here are the meat and potatoes of what you're gonna look at in your next meeting and actually vote on. The other changes will be there. You'll see them all in red line, but it'll be a bunch of wordsmithing type of stuff. So we really want to get this part right because otherwise we can't run our program the way we want to if we don't word it correctly.
So at the risk of poking the bureaucracy bear, I'd like a clarification. So we just had a discussion and there was no motion. But that was kind of frowned upon 20 minutes ago.
So for you can't have a discussion on the motion until you've had a motion and a second. So then you can have discussion. Trying to establish like a date or that, then that's kind of like, it's not a discussion on the motion.
Okay.
So yeah, it gets a little
Okay.
frustrating because a lot of times even questions kind of bring forward sort of a discussion without.
And we're a little more informal in this group, but we
Yeah.
try and keep
We're-
it as.
And again,
as
we're
unboxed as we can, so it's not perfect.
we're even asking our neighborhood associations to have improved processes and codes of conduct and things like that. So it's always a learning curve. And I think that more importantly, all I was trying to say is it would be nice to have those members that are still here to be involved in this because that's, a lot of weighted information. Because this is a significant thing happening and it's better that if you can do it as this body is.
And when they take effect, these two will be on the commission and two of you won't be in January. So this is good. It's actually.
Yeah, I would love to have the knowledge, if we can capture it before. I know it's gonna be hard to find scheduling.
So my recommendation would be just that, John, just to ask somebody for a motion to just table this to a special meeting in December when you have the red lines available. And,
Yeah, let's
We'll just,
So moved, just say so
So moved.
moved.
there you go.
Alex got a second? All right, I don't even think I need to do a roll call for this. So all in favor of tabling this until we get the red lines from John, say aye. Aye.
I
Oh, that was easy. Why didn't you just ask me that 15 minutes ago? I get what you were trying to do and I was supportive.
John got too much help on that one.
All
That's a
right,
good exercise.
so let's see. I don't think there are any more action items, so we can move on to items for commission discussion. I would just remind folks that our next meeting is in January. Well, our next regularly scheduled meeting is in January. We'll be nominating and electing new officers. I will be present to kind of start off running that meeting. But I won't be voting. We need chair and vice chair. If folks are interested in it, you need to, you're not supposed to self-nominate. So talk to somebody else on the commission and before tossing your hat in the ring. And yeah, so we do need two positions and I encourage y'all to throw your hat in the ring.
Because you just demonstrated how fun it must be.
So I did 8 years, the most painful one, and the funny thing is, it was only painful because of procedure, because I think everybody is kind of on the same page.
But it's also the fact that this is something relatively new and significant.
It is significant, I think we want to get it right.
And oftentimes, a motion will be somewhat prepared. When, like in a council meeting, there'll be a staff recommendation. And so you'll see that and it's like, then you can make that motion or you can amend that motion.
I think some of this would have been better if we had gotten this presentation in the last meeting, and then we had a meeting to chew on it, and then we could have come in with a well-formulated thing.
But the benefit is at least now you've got the concept, you understand what we're going, so we don't have to have this discussion in January. You can just get down into the meat and potatoes and so I think it's still valuable.
I've got one item on that category when you get to that spot.
On the items for commission discussion?
Right.
Yes, please go ahead, Doug.
We have two of us that are leaving have committee positions. And the one that comes to mind is the master plan. I think the terminal is done in that sense. So that is something I assume you're going to want to place with AAC members.
So technically, you're on the master plan planning advisory committee meeting representing the airport advisory committee.
Correct.
So there's no requirement for you to not be on the PAC any longer for the master plan, because the master plan is still going on. So it's really up to the commission to decide if they're comfortable with you two remaining on the planning advisory commission planning advisory committee meeting for the master plan and reporting back to the AAC, or if the AAC wants to appoint two different people.
Well,
to
I
the
know
master.
Mike was already on there.
So Mike's on it already, so yeah.
Yeah.
So there's really, it probably isn't really a thing, but I forgot that Mike was on there, but you two are not, doesn't mean you're not eligible to be on it. You're not only representing the AAC, right?
Try to keep.
Not representing the AAC necessarily, but you're still representing organizations on the airport that would be affected by the master plan. So
That's for sure.
yes.
Yes.
Well, and the other thing is, it might be because most of the information we got from this organization. It might be good to have some new blood on. Because I know that you're in a spot now where that's gonna get real important in the first quarter or so.
Yeah, my recommendation, at least from the master plan PAC side, is that we don't change the complexion of that, so you two can stay on it. I guess the question is if the commission wants to appoint anyone else from the commission with Mike to sit on that also, because now we won't have to worry about a quorum.
Right.
You guys were three, if we added a fourth, we'd have a quorum, so we can do that.
Right.
So that's for you to decide, and it doesn't have to be a formal motion or anything like that. Somebody can volunteer if they want to sit on, or you can just have Mike be your conduit back to the AAC, and you two are welcome to show up or attend future AAC meetings to give your 2 cents if that's what the commission wants to do. So but yours, so you're your commission.
I think it should be the rest of the folks driving that discussion since I'm not gonna be.
It's gonna affect your pay and you don't want that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Ron.
I couldn't attend because of the quorum problem.
Oh, yeah. I think-
So I'm still interested to learn more about the workings, and it seems like a great opportunity.
You'd totally be in support of it.
Okay.
I don't know, John, if you can put Arnold's hat back in the ring there.
Yeah, we can add as many. We just try and keep it manageable, mainly for the federal government. I've seen PACs get as big as 25 or 30 people, and it really gets problematic beyond 15 or so.
I believe Bill Smaldon represented last time.
Yes, that's right.
This would
He did.
negate that.
It would or would not?
It would.
Okay, so you would just replace Bill.
Yes,
That's
I would
right.
replace Bill.
Thanks for
So
that,
we
Ryan.
will not add an extra person.
Okay, that's right, because Bill, since you couldn't attend for the quorum, that's right. Thank you for that reminder. Okay. Now, the question is, if you two, John and Doug, still want to serve on the PAC, you don't have to let me know now. You can just let me know via email. You're willing or you're not willing. I'll just take you off the PAC if you're not willing.
Okay.
And if you want to replace yourselves with another body, that's fine too. We just want to make sure we had good cross-section of the airport users.
And there's only one other thing, and I've been attending SOG for reporting back. Aaron's attending it, which I assume is, but there is a spot if you want to put someone else wants to.
Yeah, that doesn't have to be a commission member either. The whole purpose of that group was just an informal, airport users group that can just discuss day-to-day things without.
It's gonna be the runway use, and that's where it's gonna impact unless we get that group's input.
I've not. Yeah, that's.
I've been attending.
You bet.
When are those meetings?
Excuse me, second Tuesday, other month. Used to be, now it's.
Yeah,
now it's
Ron
Tuesday.
has to move them around because the Velo keeps changing their schedule, so he's not always available. He's got to go out here and ground handle, so they're not necessarily set in stone like they used to be.
Are they during the day or?
Yeah, they're at 10 o'clock at the flight deck.
There's donuts and coffee if that gets anybody there.
Well, there used to be, but now, so the owner can't be there on Tuesday, so
Oh, geez.
it's a little hit or miss on.
This is why I don't go to them anymore. I don't know when they are and there's no coffee and donuts. Like I said,
I know, Aaron.
and I understand he's doing a great job. So.
Absolutely. I just, the feedback is going to center, for instance, when we're talking about badging, we're talking about the runways, when we're talking about all of that. A lot of that gets discussed down there that kind of we need to hear here too, so.
Well, again, this is the commission's meeting, it's not mine, so if someone else wants to try and attend some of the user group meetings to report back.
If they
You're
were
under
at
the
10
chair.
a.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's not a good time for
for
working folks, is it?
For all the retired folks, it's great, but.
Yeah, I think that's been the kind of the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that conduit is critical either. I mean, it's, that group didn't exist for the longest time, but what was happening is these meetings were becoming those meetings, and we're here till 8 or 9 o'clock talking about day-to-day business, and people had kids at home, and so we kind of parsed those out so that we could sort of stay on task here and then just have day-to-day business discussions once a month, that kind of stuff. So not critical, it's not required. It's
I'd be open at some point in time. That was.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I talked to Isaac next too, because he's there pretty regularly.
Yeah. Maybe we even have them over at Garmin. Maybe they'll bring coffee and donuts. Just throwing it out there. We're still being recorded, so I'm gonna stop. Well, you
All right. Was there any other?
I don't mind throwing my name in the development pack as well.
For the master plan?
Yeah, master plan.
Okay.
I don't know what the gentlemen are planning on doing, but. That'd be two, I guess, 3 commissioners.
Are you gonna stay on the pack, John, do you think, for the master plan?
Interesting, I guess it depends on how, I've been waiting for it to.
Yeah,
To
unpause.
To come back up, yeah,
It's gonna be a little while, yeah.
and it will be an interesting discussion on the one.
Only because I think, then the reason I asked the question is, I think it's important to have Garmin representation on the pack. So if you don't want to, then I would see if Ben could, but then now we have another AAC person, so I'd have 4. So, yeah.
Well, let's plan on.
Yeah, you guys can just, okay. Well,